We're excited you guys are here. This is our monthly coffee to kind of give you an update on where we are, district-wide happenings, our building project kind of progress and where we are, and then we'll give you plenty of time to ask any questions. Folks that work for the district, let's just introduce ourselves and our role. So I'm Larry, I'm superintendent. Joe, we'll just kind of go through nothing formal, just hey, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I do for the district. Just so folks that do not work for the district can see that we talk about being stronger together, and we want to know that you put names to faces and so forth. So Joe, would you start us?
Joe Markham, Director of Technology.
John Moon, Maintenance Supervisor.
Bush Schulte, Project Manager.
I'm Helen McDonald with the Community Relations Office.
Denise Pierce, Director of Business Services.
I'm Dawn Bearhurst, Assessment and Data.
Brian Cherokee,
Gary Rostoy, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education.
Mike Schiff, Principal Council. Bob Weber, Director of Facilities. Jason Hoffman, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Amy Berenson, Director of School Community Relations.
Stephanie Sackett, Co-Founder of the
Chris Galloway, Performing Arts and Business Custodian.
Sue Gaston, Secretary. Gabrielle Whittenberger, Technical Director, Miller Performing Arts Center.
Stephanie Slayer, Adult Education Director.
Ron Jewell, Adult Education and Literacy.
Shelby Scarborough, Director of Communications.
Okay. I would like to introduce two of our board members here. Michael Kuti. Thank you, Michael, for being here. Scott Owens. Thank you for being here, Scott. Are there any other board members that I missed? Okay, so thank you guys for being here. So we basically started these to make sure that we're all on the same page as a community, as a staff. I know there's some that are watching online, and we just want to thank everybody here that we're all in this together. So basically, the outline for today, Dawn Bearhurst is going to talk about our annual performance report, kind of give an overview of that. You can ask some questions along the way with that. And then second, we will talk about our bond issue, where we are. Kerry Benefit with Architects Alliance is here. Nat Holtz and folks are here with Nat Holtz Construction, our construction manager, and kind of give you an overview of where we are timeline-wise, and then give you plenty of time to ask some questions. So then after that, I'll kind of summarize and highlight a couple things, and then any questions at all. We always try to be done by 8 o'clock for sure. If you want to stay longer, you sure can. I'm going over to the State Board of Education meeting at 8:30. So if you're really wanting to bend my ear a lot when we're done at 8, you can limit it, or we can set another time. Would be good because I want to. I'm planning on going over it. So anyway, without any further ado, Dawn, if you'll talk about our annual performance report. And this is basically the bottom line: how schools are assessed. Are they heading in the right direction or not? Some 5 variables that Dawn will get into this. But anyway, Dawn, the floor is yours.
Good morning. So the annual performance report, as Dr. Linthicum said, is a measure of how school districts are doing on a variety of different factors. There are 5 indicators, which I'll explain to you in just a minute, and they're looked at how they're performing, which is status, and how they're improving, which is growth, and points are awarded based on those indicators. We've made some progress over the last couple of years. In 2015, we were at a 70.6, and in 2016, it increased to 76.1. And then this last year, we were at 80%. Now that's overall across all 5 measures. So we're seeing growth in the district, and that's a really good thing. We're not where we want to be, but there's room for improvement, but we're headed the right direction. So these are the 5 different indicators. You can see at the bottom, the print is rather small, but the first one is academic achievement. That looks at the performance of all kids, and that is in math, English language arts, social studies, and science. And those points are combined together to say, how is the district doing overall in those 4 areas with all kids in academic achievement? So again, you can see that our trend in terms of points earned is in an upward swing. When you look at subgroup achievement, That pulls out any students that are free and reduced lunch, that have an individual education program and receiving special education services, that are English language learners and English is not their first language, students that are Black, and students that are Hispanic. And those 5 subgroups are identified based on trends over time of lower performing groups. And they form what they call a super subgroup. So essentially they just combine the scores of all of those children, and then they look at their progress across those 4 content areas. Again, math, English language arts, science, and social studies. So in 2015, we actually had our highest number of points earned there. So that is not, obviously that's not the direct, we didn't want to fall down in 2016, but again, we've earned some additional points in 2017 and we'll continue to focus on closing that gap. College and career ready is one of those indicators that looks at a lot of different things. There are 3 different components within college and career ready. The first is how students are performing on college and career ready measures. So the measures that we look at are ACT and SAT, ASVAB, which is the military kind of skills assessment that kind of hones in on where you might be best suited in an aptitude test, if you will. And then that's one set of points that you earn. And then the next one is on some of the course offerings that are in the school system that prepare kids for college and career. And those are AP course offerings, dual credit courses, Project Lead the Way courses, and that's another set of points that are awarded there. And then the third component of that college and career ready is post-secondary education. So after kids graduate, 6 months after they graduate, we do a follow-up study with every graduate. And we see what they're doing. Are they in college? Are they working? If they're working, are they working in a field that they were trained for through our Nichols Career Center program? Are they in the military? What are they doing? And there are the categories that award positive points, if you will, are working in a related field, in the military, or they're going to college. So those 3 indicators, the first one I talked about the assessments, ACT, SAT, and then our course offerings like AP, dual credit, and then the post-secondary follow-up, what kids are doing after graduation, are all added together to be a measure of college and career readiness. And as you can see, that is an area that we're really proud of. That's an area that we continually get a large percentage of the points earned in those areas, and we're increasing. So we're at over 90% of the points possible that you can earn in that area. So we continue to look for ways to improve that, but we're pleased with the progress and the results in that area. The 4th category is attendance. This is an area we struggle with. As you can see, the trend has been very flat in terms of the percent of points earned. Now again, we're talking about the points we've earned on the APR. And so we've gotten the same amount of points, which is 75% of the points possible every year for the last 3 years. It's an area that we've focused on in terms of trying to increase attendance of our kids, because we know we can't impact those other things if kids aren't in school. But it's, yes?
You might just clarify. If you look at that, like 75% of our attendance, kids are only here every 3 out of 4 days. It's 75% of the total points.
Yes.
Okay, so our attendance rate, a daily rate is greater than 75%. Is that my indicator? So just for clarification.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, that applies to all of these indicators. This is a reflection of the points earned on the APR, because it's really the only way you can add all those measures together. So this is our APR points earned. So thank you very much. And then on graduation rate, the last 2 years we have earned, interestingly enough, we've earned 95% of the points possible in graduation rate, where in this first year, 2015, we earned 100%. However, interestingly enough, our graduation rate was actually higher in this 2016 year than it was in 2015, but that's the nature of the way the APR works. It looks at a variety of factors of whether you've improved. And so we had made greater gains from 14 to 15, and that's why the points earned were higher in 15. Again, this is an area we want to continue to work on. We want 100% of the points in that area. Again, it's certainly not 100% of our kids graduate, but again, we're earning the vast majority of the points in our graduation rate there. Any questions on this? I know I've thrown a lot of details at you in a short amount of time. Yes?
You talked about college, so does that mean post-secondary education, that you take about some technical school?
Yes, good question. Yes, so if they go into any kind of non-college even, so if they've gone into a one-year trade program or a two-year skilled trade program like a technical school, that counts as education. So any kind of post-secondary education counts in that. So, yeah.
When you see all of that in a paper, combining and comparing all the school districts around, the issue of subgroup achievement gets lost, I think, in comparison with other school districts. And do they not, is that not a part of some comparison, or is that just an easy way to not mention it?
It's actually, when you look at the annual performance report, it's been a concern of large, diverse districts all along, because your small rural districts don't have as much diversity. Now, poverty's in there, so kids of poverty would certainly count towards that super subgroup, but it's your small rural districts that don't have a high poverty that certainly have an advantage there, because high poverty districts and districts with any kind of diversity whatsoever, large ELL programs. Jefferson City has a lot of special education offerings that some of our smaller communities aren't able to offer. So any of those, and we're proud of that and wouldn't change that. But any of those types of programs are going to increase the percent of kids that are evaluated in that super subgroup. So to compare a district with no diversity or poverty to a Jefferson City Public Schools or a St. Louis City or a Columbia, it just isn't a fair comparison.
I'm sure that's collected. The data is collected.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. At a student level, yes, absolutely. But they lump it all into a super subgroup. So there's nothing in those percent of points earned or those scores that would indicate that Jefferson City has 70% of their kids or 65% of their kids in that super subgroup, while a neighboring district might have 10%. There's nothing in the measure that would tell that story.
But it's interesting when the paper cuts, I'm sure this happens anywhere, not just Jefferson City.
Yes.
That they don't ever say those things, that
Right.
Jefferson City is educating everybody.
Yeah.
That Columbia and St. Louis, that never gets said. So
Right.
Texas, they
Yes.
never-
Would you like?
Well, and I might just touch on, I had this conversation with Jim Jones at Blair Oaks. Their poverty is 13%, and we're at 59% poverty. Of the differences of the research would say of kids that grow up in poverty, how much more challenging it is. It's no excuse whatsoever. Whether you grew up poor or not, we want all kids to be able to read and to attain at a high level. But it's not an apples to apples comparison. We recognize that. Just got to keep moving forward. Are we making gains and improvement as we go through this? So fair questions and comments. Is anybody here from the Tribune today? Nobody's here from the Tribune? Just asking. We'll go on with that. Yeah.
When we are communicating with our reporters, we are making those statements.
Go ahead.
Good questions. Anybody else? Okay, then the only other thing that I wanted to share with you, the APR looks at performance because they are trying to combine performance of a large number of students in different achievement levels. So you take a test and there are 4 categories, and I might be a below basic, and Carol is scoring basic, and Stephanie is scoring proficient, and Ron is scoring advanced. Trying to combine all of that with the different grade levels and the different content areas, they've come up with a measure called a MAP index. And what that does is it assigns a weight to the different achievement levels on the map. So because I'm below basic, I get a weight of 1. Carol gets a weight of 3 as a below basic, and that is a very deliberate decision by DESE. They want to move kids from below basic to basic. Stephanie gets a 4, and Ron gets a 5. So they combine all those together into an index score to evaluate performance over time. So that's how you can compare different tests over time and different schools from year to year. So that index then is how they measure success on academic achievement. And I thought it was interesting and I would share with you, this is the difference in the MAP performance index. So the lowest you can get on a MAP performance index is 100, and the highest you can get is a 500. So that's kind of the range you're looking in. And from 16 to 17, when you looked at our performance in these different content areas, so this is our MAP, grades 3 through 5 in English Language Arts, we had a small increase in that MAP index. Same thing with English 1, a small increase. When you look at English 2, the first thing is, but I don't know if you guys remember or kept up with the paper. The state had some test issues this year with their end of course assessments. And so they actually threw the English 2 results out because the state dropped so much that they said they can't make a reliable comparison to last year's score. So while the state threw those out, I decided to leave them in here so you would have that information, but keep in mind our drop is consistent with the state drop. You might also note algebra, the same thing happened with Algebra 1 across the state. They threw the Algebra 1 scores out because statewide the dip was so dramatic they couldn't reliably use it as a measure of progress. But look what happened in Jeff City Public Schools. We had an increase despite the drop in the state. So I think that's a big win for us. We saw increases in our grades 3 through 8 math, increases in Algebra 2, geometry, in grades 3 and 8 science, a small dip in biology, and then American history and government gains in the MAP index. So we're excited about some of those gains, but we know we have a long way to go in terms of continuing to work on, we want to see those bars all above the line and really tall in terms of differences. So yeah, hi Steve. Pardon me? Thank you. For grades 3 through 8, we use a MAP test, and they're tested every grade level, grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, in math and communication arts, or in English language arts, excuse me. So this MAP ELA represents grades 3 through 8 combined. It got a little messy when I put every grade level out there for math and everyone, so I wanted to kind of condense it. This is the MAP grade level. This is the grades 3 through 8 math. And then science is grades 5 and 8. So those are combined. These at the high school where you see actual like course names, English 1, English 2, algebra, they have end of course exams. So those exams are given at the end of a course to see how they did in terms of mastering the content. So thank you. Yeah, there are no K2 assessments at the state level. Thank you. Any other questions? Anything you want to add?
No, I think it's a great job, Don, and thank you. There's a lot of different parts to it at the end of the day. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do. The one thing I will say, the science standards are changing. Those go into effect next year, I believe. So there's been a lot of work kind of gearing up to that change in standards. But I don't know anything about the correlation with evolution. Strictly state test. There's no national comparison. No. No. No, there is a national assessment that we are required to participate in, but it's a sampling, and so they don't report back at the district level, only the state level. So there's no national comparison. That was one of the things with Common Core. They had developed the Smarter Balance test, and that would have been taken across states. But Missouri abandoned the Common Core and developed their own standards, and so we have our own assessment. And then, of course, the college and career ready measures like ACT and ASVAB and things like that are national measures, but not on this.
The national comparisons will come for ACTs and SATs, but also to see the Paul Harvey, the rest of the story, you know, they'll talk about the state of Massachusetts, the average ACT score is 23.4 or 24.1. Well, the rest of that story is maybe only 27% of the students take the ACT.
Right.
Whereas the state of Missouri average is 20.6, but 80% of the kids take it. So, you know.
And we had 94%.
East Coast, West Coast thing. I think it's important to pay attention to how many kids and support that.
That's a really good thing, because we've a really good point. We had 94% of our kids take the ACT because the state paid for it the last 2 years. And because of funding problems, they decided not to fund the ACT this year, but Jefferson City Public Schools is going to continue to fund it for our students because we think it's important and it gives our teachers good information, so.
Okay, let's go on. Thank you, Dawn. Great job. We'll give an update at our, Dawn's going to give an update at our board meeting a week from Monday regarding the APR and in the weeds a little bit. Some parts of that. Carrie Gamper with Architect Alliance, if you would come up and kind of give us an update. If you want to involve folks involved,
Here, Carrie. It won't stream online if you don't have it on. It doesn't stream online that way.
Mr. Beamster, you need to be up here. Well, I'm Kerry Gamper with the Architects Alliance. Thanks for coming this morning. I do want to recognize a couple folks from our office, and Michael will recognize the folks from his office. But first, you can't hear me?
Put it closer to you.
Let's turn this one on. You warmed up to sing? Are you ready?
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay, sorry. I'm Kerry Gamper with the Architects Alliance. Just to let you know a couple folks here from our team. We are teamed with DLR Architects as well as ACI Boland. And from our office here today, our project manager, not only for the Jefferson City High School projects, but also for many of the renovations you've seen over the years at our elementary school, is Leslie Backstrom. Can you raise your hand? She's not very tall, but Leslie has a daughter that's goes to North Callaway Hills, and her daughter is in what grade? Second grade. And she's just as tall as Leslie. But Leslie is really the backbone of the team in our office. Also, my wife Julia is here, who spent 19 years in the Jefferson City Public School System. She then spent about a decade out at Blair Oaks and recently retired as a middle school principal. And we stole her back, and she works in our office too, so she provides great input from a faculty administrator standpoint of how architects should be doing things. So I'll just be very brief on where we are in the design process, and it's going to dovetail very easily into what Michael has to talk about in terms of construction management. But the project is, as you know, obviously 2 facilities. They have one architectural program between the 2. In other words, the set of goals for both facilities is the same. they are drastically different. When Nabholz was selected, they do very large-scale, complicated educational construction projects, and they'll tell you some of their resume of schools they are doing right now around the country, around the Midwest. But we very quickly realized we were concentrating on the current high school because it was very difficult. It was half the budget of the new high school, but very difficult to renovate and expand an existing high school. Nabholz came on board and let us know very quickly that we had a massive earth moving project required out on 179, months of earthwork to happen out there. So we moved over and started concentrating on that. And we have completed the schematic design for that facility, which is really, in vernacular, plans, elevations, sections, the basic architecture, what you would expect to see in drawings. So with schematic design complete, we're now in what we call design development, which means all the other disciplines are on board. Civil engineering, structural engineering, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, all of the exciting stuff that we're sparing you to have them come up and talk today, but we'd be happy to let you walk through their documents as well. While we're still working on the building systems, the construction manager has advised us that we can get started, and they're going to talk about that, but the project has actually started bidding. The bidding process has started with some early bid packages for the second high school. So while we're still designing fine details, bidding on site work has begun. I'll let Michael talk about that, with the goal of getting a building pad established as soon as possible so that real building construction can start. And CMPS, Central Missouri Professional Services, under Mike Bates, Paul Sampson, and Brian McMillan here in town are leading that effort, along with Bruce Dawson of Gradell Engineering here in town on subsurface investigations. I'm sure there'll be several set packages to follow that Michael will touch on. The other thing that's happening, last item I can speak to on the second high school, is that there's a conditional use. When you build a high school or when you build a school in a neighborhood, the neighbors have the right to know what's coming. So there's some meetings set up for the public to see, particularly the folks in the immediate area, to see what the project is. In an oversimplified version, if you're on 179 and looking at the two sites, you see a very tall hospital, multi-story hospital. The high school on the other side of the roundabout, when you're on top of the hill, will look like a one-story building. It's very low, one story. However, it steps down the hill. So from 179, it will look like a three-story building. It will not be nearly as tall and massive as the hospital. And I'm sure the neighborhood will be interested in seeing those diagrams. Switching to the current high school, we are in schematic design. We are about to complete schematic design. We've seen a final draft of it. We're about to present that to the Board of Education, which would be, again, all of the floor plans for renovations in both the current high school and Nichols Career Center, as well as building additions. There's also new construction happening there of common areas, media centers, auxiliary gymnasiums, that sort of thing. So we are about to present the schematic design to the owner, to the school district, at the end of this month. I guess this is the beginning of December, so we're about to present that. It is a more cumbersome project because it's an interaction of an old building, two different ages, plus new construction between. But again, they both have the same goal in mind as far as teaching environments and amenities for faculty and students. We have another round of upcoming meetings with high school faculty to show them the next round of refinement on the floor plans for the high school, and the same goes, same goes for the Nichols Career Center staff. Those meetings are coming up in the first half of, maybe the first week of December. I don't have the dates in my head, but those meetings are coming. We will be in the buildings again over the holidays. Particularly Nichols Career Center has a lot of expensive equipment that either needs new power hookups, needs to be relocated or reused, or they may be buying new equipment too. So we will be getting into the details. They have some professional equipment in there that you would see in an auto shop or a print shop. We're not really renovating the culinary kitchen, but that's all professional equipment over there that has to be accommodated in terms of building infrastructure. Another complication with the current high school is the staging. It's an occupied site. We're not going to shut down school. It will be occupied. There will be renovations going on. There will be temporary classrooms kids will be moving in and out of. Safety and staging is the number one concern there, and frankly, these guys are the experts at managing that process with both the owner and with the subcontractors. The last thing I might mention is when I talk about staging of an existing building, and if you imagine we've doubled the size of a bank before, they don't close. I think years ago we had a massive renovation of Trinity Lutheran. We had 7 additions at once. We had an elevator addition, a fellowship hall, administration, 2 stories of classrooms, a new gymnasium, expansion of the kitchen, and I'm forgetting the 7th one. But the point is that was a miserable year over at Trinity Lutheran, but we got it all done in 1 year, and they were glad to get it over in 1 year. So that's why we have Nabholz on board, and that's their job. So I'm going to let Michael talk to that. Any questions about the design progress of the project on either one of the facilities? Nope. Thank you all.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Or do I just go ahead and get to the mic? I'll just leave this down. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Good morning. My name is Michael Feimster with Nabholz. Good to see you again. Brought a few of us here with us. You guys mind introducing yourselves?
Yeah.
And Mitchell's from just a little bit north of here, so. And Dale's from a little bit of south of here, so. So, again, Michael Feimster, Senior Project Manager with Nabholz Construction. As Carrie mentioned, we just had a bid day, so it was our first bid day for the second high school, so I'll touch on the second high school first. So you have to realize as we're going through this process, a lot of times typically you have construction documents come out, and then those are bid, and then you have all of those packages going out. Well, with the process for the schedule of the district and the requirements that we have for your current 7th graders to get in partially in 2019, we had to overlap design and construction. So we are in the process of bidding. We had the site clearing, that's all the trees at the second high school, for that package, as well as some temporary entrances to start getting us staged on that site. So we will not be leaving. It'll be starting here next month, or this month now, December 1st. We'll be starting very soon, mobilizing, starting to clear all those trees, putting in our temporary entrances, our laydown areas, things of that nature, whilst we're still continuing in on the design phase. As Carrie mentioned, we're in the design development stage for the entirety of the project of the second high school. So you'll see a lot more of us start showing up more and more. That's pretty much the process of the second high school as it stands now. We had a great turnout on Wednesday from about 7 bidders, mostly of which were local. Very competitive numbers for the dollars of the district and also the taxpayers' dollars as well. So right now what we're doing is we're de-scoping all of those folks, making sure that they're pre-qualified to do the work, And then we will present that information to the Board of Education and the administration team to make a decision as a team, what's best for them and the dollars to move forward with that first package. So the next package is going to be the full earthwork. So right now it's just the preliminary site clearing. We're not doing any grading, anything of that nature. It is just clearing trees, getting us ready to stage. So that way when we go into January, we're able to have our civil engineer come out and he's going to take a topographical survey of that land. So that way he can plot it or they can plot it. It's then put on a drawing and we can utilize that as part of the final construction documents for the entirety of the earthwork package. So that earthwork package is the one Carrie was kind of alluding to as the big package of the second high school. That will be going out in the middle of January. So that's where we stand currently on the second high school. The current high school, as Carrie mentioned, is about to go into design development. Design team is about to present to the Board of Education, but we are still working through a process with how are we going to keep those kids safe, faculty safe, segregated from construction workers, ensuring that fire marshal, code officials are happy with how we stage the entirety of this project, and ultimately that the district is getting what they need at the end of the day and are kept safe. So that's what we're doing. We have our third meeting today with the district to go through how are we phasing this, working to a final goal that we're all happy and we can continue to communicate that plan throughout the construction phase. So no bid packages will be going out for the current high school until much later down the road, sometime next summer. If we get anything earlier than that, we would be grateful, but right now we're looking at next summer time frame. Are there any questions for us? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know Carrie mentioned, you kind of alluded to this as well. A lot of earthwork. Is it going to be fill or moving earth, or what's the?
So right now, the quantities, it's about 398,000 cubic yards of cut and about 500,000 cubic yards of fill. So pretty massive quantities. There's also blasting involved in that as well, because there's a lot of rock in the area.
Does that make it easier to put it in geothermal since you've got a lot of fill?
We've looked at that option as far as a potential option. Right now, with the budget that the district has, we're going a different route, unless they make a different decision. So, any other questions? Thank you, appreciate it.
Good, thank you, Mike. So, and as always, I don't think I said this at the beginning. It's 7:39 right now. If you need to leave, if you want to leave, if you've been bored, whatever. We want this to be very informal because we understand folks have to get to work. I wanted to touch on just a couple things and then open up for questions on anything. I want to touch a little bit on just kind of where we are on the naming of the second high school. I want to talk a little bit about snow days, what that looks like, the process with that, and talk about boundary lines. Were three things that are usually of interest to folks. So we have one more week, Amy, is that correct? Till next Wednesday, as far as folks have an opportunity to give their input and their vote on the naming of the second high school. So the three names, the three choices are Stone Ridge High School, Mission High School, and Capital City High School are the three names that the board approved from a committee. And so we've had a lot of votes and encouraging folks for their voice to be heard with that. So that's through next Wednesday on that. Snow days. So it is December 1st and that time of year when we decide whether we have school or not or have a 2-hour delay. This is my 10th year as a superintendent, and there's never been 2 days that are the same with regards to deciding about school. But at the end of the day, trying to make sure that our folks are safe. I do say, I've said many times, we do live in Missouri, folks. We get an inch of snow and folks think we should shut down for a while. So we're asking folks to be slow, but there is a process that we go through. There's a lot of folks who are involved with that. At the end of the day, we had a meeting here a couple weeks ago with some folks to help me come up with that decision, and we want input. Not that we need patron input in that, but I'm making that decision by 5:30 in the morning to ensure that our folks are safe. So we have in place to not have school. We have in place to have a 2-hour delay. Can help us at times, help bus drivers see a little bit better, help our students when they drive to school if they're 16 years of age and not to fight the state government traffic through that process as well, and we can still count as a school day, but to ensure that our kids are safe. One thing that, you know, I came from Northwest Missouri. I had a different rule. As a general rule, I kind of use 6 inches of snow. And I know folks here, if we had 6 inches of here, I know what it would do to this community, or I have an idea of what would happen. So if we got 2 or 3 inches of snow, it was no big deal. That's a big deal here, and I recognize that. But whether I'm getting soft, you can call it, I am getting soft in other ways, but as we move along here, our attendance really suffers on days that if we're the only school that's in school and everybody else, you know, had a snow day. You know, you can say, well, you know, suck it up, or, you know, I walked uphill both ways as a kid, right? And what we say that, you know, 2 miles and it was uphill both ways to school and home from school. You can have that mindset, and I have some of that in me. But when it kills our attendance, because many folks just keep their kids at home if we get a ½ inch of snow. So we have to factor that in. So you may say, why the heck didn't they go to school? You know, when I was a kid, I hear both sides. Why didn't you go to school, or why are you in school? And that's part of the job. But there is a process that we go through, take that very seriously, to be able to defend through that process. We like to have a decision by 5:30. I've had it one time at 6:40 a.m. Previous district, we called off school when it was misting and the temperature was dropping and it was ice and we had 2 buses stranded. And that was not good. But you know, we had folks coming in at breakfast and those things, but we had to make a decision. Last year, I believe on the 16th of December, I believe, and the temperature was supposed to be 34 degrees at 4 p.m. and the temperature increased throughout the day, and it was misting. It didn't increase, and it was icy, and it was horrible. But hindsight's 20/20. Could have done that, and I'll take responsibility for that. I could have done a better job on that. So there's a lot of parts to that, and I just wanted to touch on that. Any questions on that at all? Yeah, James. Absolutely as well. Those decisions, trying to, making sure, talking with our bus drivers. I will say this, there has been times that it's snowing like crazy at 11 o'clock. And folks are calling, and why the heck are we in school? And it's supposed to stop by 2 p.m. And I've had at times where at 3:30 the sun was shining and there was no snow, but at 11 o'clock it was slick. And so is it going to be worse? Is it going to be better? And trying to make that determination, would it be better to try to get kids home at 12:30 or 1 o'clock versus waiting till 4? If you think it's going to be worse at 4 than it is at 1, yes, you want to try. If you think it's going to be better then, we have some kids that go home that do not have meals. We try to feed them if we can at all possible, because we have some kids, some students, we want to ensure that we want to give them an opportunity to eat. So there is a process with that as well, as far as getting an early out. So it's happened, it will happen again. Whether it will today as the sun is shining now, who knows? But good question. Boundary lines. So I've touched on here the challenge here with the location for the second high school off of 179 is in Cedar Hill boundary lines, and Cedar Hill feeds the current high school. As a general guide, Thomas Jefferson will feed the second high school, and Lewis and Clark will feed the current high school. We are wanting to keep the demographics very, very similar. Right now they are very, very similar between Lewis and Clark, Thomas Jefferson, and we want to keep those the same, as in, so we're not having the haves and the have-nots. So the poverty between those two as a district, we're 59% as a school district on our poverty, and we want to keep those very similar. So we have, we're going to have a meeting here in a couple weeks. We asked for volunteers for folks. We want to try to get 3 from each elementary school. So we have 11 elementary schools, 3 from each would be 33 folks. And to meet with them and vet the process, we have a demographer. That it's different now. They bring up a map and they can click here and change. Here's what the enrollment would change between buildings. Here's what the demographics would change with regards to poverty between the buildings. And it's a lot than years ago when they would try to determine where you would move boundary lines. So we're going to work through that process. We are also looking at district-wide or other boundary wholesale changes, but get some common sense of why is this boundary line going to take a look. We understand those are very sensitive topics. You better not mess with my boundary lines. I mean, I've literally been told that. And I understand that. You know, folks buy a house based on, I want to go to this school. And we recognize that. I will say, and I'll say again, that our goal is, no matter where you live, that it's a quality education. With that said, we recognize that folks, there are traditions of school and my parents went to school and my grandparents and so forth, of neighborhood schools, and we recognize that and value that. So we want to factor that some comments. We changed boundary lines last year, Thorpe Gordon, Morrill Heights, and East Elementary. We went and met with the parents of each of those buildings. We feel like it was a pretty smooth transition. We're still working through that, but overall it's been positive, and we'll continue with that. So I just wanted to touch on that with regards to district-wide, give updates at the next year at the latest. We hope to have boundary lines finalized. Okay, I hope it'll be before then. We have, but at the latest, so folks would have a year. You know what? We completely these lines. We're going to up and move, and I hope folks don't make that decision. But if they do, I have said that if it was a perfect scenario, we'd say, hey, 10 years from now, here's where the and you wait 10 years, and then folks have 10 years to do what they need to do. It's not a perfect world. We don't have 10 years, but we want to at least get a year to have it make a recommendation to the Board of Education and ask them for approval, and hopefully that we vetted it and weighed the pros and cons that will involve the community in that process. Give any opportunity to ask on this. So, any questions on boundary lines you want to talk about? It's such a fun topic to talk about boundary lines and snow days and the Mizzou Tigers. So, okay, what question? So again, if you need to get
Figured out how to get numbers on things like courtesy and one another, and how that's improving and how various groups.
as in educating about character education or adult
Of student behavior in terms of courtesy and treating each other with respect. Is that
as I'm sure you can understand, an important part in trying to, I've said, what's that? I'm sure there's a way to measure that. And I know in our buildings of, or being recognized. I know our they will give a, I don't know what it's called, but a certificate of some positive, our PBS of recognizing positive, and the fine line between Johnny, but Frank's doing a, give you an, we're not saying have a group hug, expect line of where that is. As a general rule, I'll say this: let's see as the character trait of the month, and feel like let's hire honest folks that then will carry that out in everything and permeates in everything they do. Now, we still have honesty as the theme of the month, or word of the month, or month. I know our elementary schools at bullying prevention, character education, it's trying to filter, and we know about diversity. That was an aspect of working through differences, what that looks like. Being courteous even when you're different. Or you have a grade versus my grade is different, how we work through those things. So, an ongoing through courtesy as adults and as being part of. I may be rambled, but that's a very challenging thing. Just giving a grade on whether kids are courteous or not, but we recognize that's important. I think our Board of Education values that.
I want to just follow up on the question about HVAC systems being considered. We could, you don't want to talk all day about it, but we did look at a lot of different systems. Mike mentioned budget, but that wasn't only additional cost of budget, that also was operating budget. You mentioned geothermal. I have geothermal in my house. We put lots of geothermal in buildings. Pioneer Trail is a geothermal just since Pioneer, but even in the last 5 years, have dramatically increased. When you talk about cost of installation and operating cost thereafter, is extremely competitive in the GA program now. So there's a lot of detail and a lot of thought in that by the engineering team. If you're an engineering type and want to get into those, I'd be happy to hook you up with the experts, but that was a serious consideration. Frankly, I thought that the project would be geothermal, and was surprised to learn how competitive systems and the life cycle costing dramatically increased even in the last 5 years.
We made a decision what you are going to go with as far as heating and cooling? VRBO?
GRF.
Check.
Okay, so I know attendance is a big focus for our district this year.
Yes. Yes.
At the end of the day, we have the same 50 kids every day who are 20, 30 minutes late checking into the office. Our attendance numbers, I'm not shy to say this, are normally some of the worst in the district as far as trying to get that 99 number. I think right now, this is the time that we need to start having a discussion about start times in our district, especially when it comes to the second high school building. All the research out there shows that our secondary students, later start times helps them in their education field. It also helps financialize for our district as far as busing, and it helps with attendance. I think that conversation really needs to start happening, especially if attendance is a real focus for this district. We want to increase our APR scores, and I'm just wondering if start time is something that is getting considered when we're talking about the second high schools, getting the second high school and third high school starting together.
Fair question. Looking at start times district-wide, I know Columbia, when they opened up Battle High School and they looked on their tiered busing and having later start times, they made a decision to go some later start times. My conversations with them, there's some positive, there's some negatives. I don't know the impact of what it has had on their attendance at the secondary level. I know there's a lot of the daylight time, the later after school start of extracurricular activities, start times, travel times, all of those factors. Yes, having the conversations about that and what that would look like. We've touched on that. I know I've had some conversations. It's not been a final decision that's been made. I encourage the building level, Gary secondary wise, Brian from a learning of all schools. It is a puzzle on start time. I've been asked the question, why can't everybody start at 8 o'clock? Okay, we could start everybody at 8 o'clock and it costs us about $1.5 million more versus having a tiered, because we can run double routes on our buses. So looking at what that would look like, what age group, is it just secondary, is it middle school, is it elementary, the inconvenience of parents going to work that take kids and working through that. So yes, having the conversations and to consider that. No decision been made on that, but we will sure have those conversations and work through that. Fair. Does anybody have any other questions? Yes.
Speaking of start times, has anyone ever looked at how later start time affects preparation for the workplace and showing up on time after you graduate? If you're starting late in high school, is that training to show up late for work?
I'm sure somebody has looked at that. I don't know, right? But that's not to say that we wouldn't take a look at that, looking at that impact of, because it is a transition-wise, start at 9 so kids can sleep in, but most of our workplaces, I guess with the old 9 to 5, the old show, but as a general rule, it's 8 o'clock start time, right? So we won't have to sing on there, but I'm not familiar with that, and I'm sure it's probably out there. So. Okay, I want to thank you guys for coming in this morning. I'll hang around here. If you guys want to ask any questions, again, I appreciate you guys coming here. Encourage folks to come. If we need to get more chairs for more folks, if we need to move a different venue, we just want to encourage to have interaction with folks as we work through the process. So thank you guys, and Merry Christmas to everybody. And thank you guys.